it's not so much about the physical attraction for women. And I think a lot of men get stuck in that because they value physical attraction so much. But women don't. Women really are looking for competency and direction and clarity and the willingness to mess up, be rejected, and still keep going. And I also think there's this important element of self-mastery when a man really finds that he's masterful that projects out and he becomes kind of like a magnet, right? Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here, and today I'm excited to get into a subscriber Q&A episode. Been really looking forward to recording this, and I'm about to pull open my list of questions, and let's get into it. We'll see how I do. All right, so I have about 10 questions here, and I'm just going to go through them one by one, and we'll see where we land. Alrighty, so number one, T. Koss says, Hey, Anya, could you speak about the impact of birth control on modern sexuality and feminism? Personally, as a man, I think it has completely overturned the relationship between men and women. Absolutely. It has completely overturned the relationship between men and women. I think you're right. I think it was a foundational moment in our history where things changed, a lot changed. And Mary Harrington talks about this in a really beautiful way in her book, Feminism Against Progress, where, she's like anti-progress. And I have to agree with her in that it was the first time where we took something that was working and we broke it, as opposed to in history, we think about penicillin, we think about other medicines that we've created, we think about certain vaccines that have helped us, be rid of tuberculosis and all of those things. We were fixing something that was broken, right? We were healing, we were healing through medicine. Whereas here, a woman's natural cycle, a woman getting pregnant, we broke that. We broke a woman's hormonal cycle in general. And I think when we did that, we kind of decoupled the responsibilities that both men and women had together, right? And so I think it's been highly impactful. I think that I talked about this in my last episode too. It kind of gets in the conversation around rights and responsibilities. And so, women had the responsibility of making sure that they didn't get pregnant. And if it did happen, obviously a man and a woman were responsible for that. And there was a real culture around like, well, what are we going to do? Shotgun wedding. Let's make this work. Let's, give the kid the best possible outcome that we can give this kid. And when we remove that, then it's like, okay, well, we removed our responsibilities together also as men and women. I would argue that we disconnected men and women from their co-creation that was happening back then. And if you actually think about it, and I'm not sure that this was happening everywhere, maybe it was happening in certain places, but the notion that men and women, when collaborating and connecting, men become privy to the female cycle. Men start to understand the different elements of a woman's cycle, the fact that she can't actually get pregnant every day of the 30 days, right? Of the 28 days. And so now, if we think about the backlash, you see a lot of women going off the pill. You see a lot of this in culture. We see this push towards understanding a woman's cycle. We see this push happening, and we see men actually talking about it, right? There's some creators that are like, okay, here's what to do when she's on luteal. Here's what to do, when she's in follicular. Here's what to do. And so all of that is kind of a backlash. So I think that I agree with Mary Harrington. Progress is not good just for progress's sake. We have to understand what we're actually progressing to. And in this case, I think birth control has been a big negative for men and women completely. I think that men and women could work much better and much more closely together in ways that maybe they did more in the past. All right. Number two, Garrett, I need advice on dating. It's hard out here. Okay. I think this makes me think of a big conversation I was having with one of my clients this week. Confidence is quite innate. And there's this conversation around, I've heard this before, and I was thinking about it myself to do an episode on it. But as a woman, being asked the question, who would you rather date, a cowboy or a bodybuilder? And the idea is, maybe the bodybuilder is perfect, if you will, right? His muscles, all of that. But what's he actually using that stuff for? Posing, right? Looking at himself in the mirror, just knowing that he can. Whereas a cowboy is, running things in a ranch. He's fixing things. He's moving things. He's actually doing things, right? He knows he's using his body to do. And I think that's a really foundational understanding about women's attraction, right? Women are attracted to competency. Women are attracted to direction and clarity and not so much looks. And I was thinking about this actually. This is like a ninth grade English teacher. She said this one day, and I don't know if other people were paying attention, but I was absolutely paying attention. And it's one of those like, moments in life you think back on and you realize, oh wow, I had no idea I was going to spend my life thinking about this. And Ms. Biggs, shout out, she said, you know, men fall in love with women they're attracted to, but women become attracted to men that they fall in love with. Right. So it's not so much about the physical attraction for women. And I think a lot of men get stuck in that because they value physical attraction so much. But women don't. Women really are looking for competency and direction and clarity and the willingness to mess up and be rejected and still keep going. And I think some of that resourcefulness and determination is really what is important. And I also think there's this important element of self-mastery for a man. I think for women too, it feels great to be masterful in something, but I think when a man really finds that he's masterful, that projects out and he becomes kind of like a magnet, right? And so that's something that I've seen a lot in life. Women when we know when we're interested in someone if they feel like a magnet to us, right? Like we want to be closer to them, we want our arm to touch their arm. If we don't feel that, that's not someone you're being drawn to. And so I think that's just really powerful, and it has nothing to do with the man in question. It's just about the attraction, like what's happening there. So I need advice on dating. Be direct, be clear. It's okay if she says no, keep it moving. Your sexuality, desire, intention, all of that stuff is really good. So keep going. Three, Scott, why don't more women ask men out? Well, very simple answer to this because they don't want to. They don't want to. I think the data is something like 87 or 88% of women still would prefer a man to ask them out. And this gets right back into the conversation I was having on my episode about the women's movement and rights and responsibilities. It's like, we want the chivalry and the responsibility that we had in the 50s with all the rights that we have today. It doesn't work like that, right? And so I do think that there is this missing conversation about dropping the proverbial white handkerchief, this collaborative energy that used to exist between men and women that I think is important. So nowadays, sometimes we say, okay, just keep on asking women out, keep asking women out. It's okay if you get rejected, but there's a lot of like blindness in that. Whereas in times past, you would get an invitation from her, whether it's, through her body language, through her eye contact. And that was her invitation for you to then come ask her out. It was almost like we're working together to get the job done. And I think we need more of that. We need more of that energy. And I think when we have these anti-male narratives, when we have this, us against them stuff, there's no space for that co-creation. And I think the co-creation can happen from, seeing a stranger across the room all the way to, of course, being in a partnership, being married and raising children together. And so the answer is simple because they don't want to. And that's it. And so there is, as a man, an opportunity for you to be more present to the actual invitations and not get so burnt out on just like asking women out one after the other when you don't get the invitation. And so maybe that needs to be taught a little more clearly. And I imagine that's something that used to be taught by fathers and grandfathers and in spaces where there was a lot of that. Again, this is a whole other conversation, but the importance of same-sex experiences and community is just so key. Jin 8982, what do you think feminism will look like after some years or a decade or two? Or do you think it'll become more and more irrelevant? I think it's tough, right? Because I am of the perspective that we don't really have a good definition for what this word feminism entails. Some people think it's just the women's movement, right, from the Victorian era all the way up until now. Some people think it's just this, it's very hateful. A handful of people think it equals female empowerment, which is not true. So I don't like the word feminism. I think it has done a lot of negative in our society, but I do see and appreciate, and as a woman, feel the need for women's empowerment. What does that have to do with feminism? I don't think anything at all. But there is a conversation around women finding their talents, finding their worth, finding their capability. And I anticipate this is not a cultural or governmental or like this isn't something that is top down, right? I imagine this is really something that your parents teach you. This is something that you get in your community, right? If you're a little girl and you've been told your whole life to sit down and shut up, and boys get to do that and girls have to sit and watch, that's really hurtful and unfortunate, and it doesn't do anyone any good. And that's very true, and that's been something that's been experienced. That has nothing to do with the movement of feminism, which I talk about all the time, which I think does us no good and has actually hurt relationships between men and women. It's also not been great for women feeling empowered and actually being connected to who they are. I've said this in videos before too, like the people that talk about the empowerment of sex work are the most desensitized, disconnected people from their body, women from their body. That is the opposite of female empowerment. You think about women and their empowerment, you think about, figures like Cleopatra, figures like I think about, Winston Churchill's wife and just how much of an influence she had on him. Queen Elizabeth, just so many figures in history. And I think that has nothing to do with feminism. So I think that and women coming alive to their value and who they are, and also the value that they have as partners with men. That's a beautiful thing. What do we call that movement? I don't know. In my world, we call that women's work. I'm going to Australia in about a month to do a retreat with this woman who she's effectively a feminine embodiment coach. And I've learned so much from her. And we sit in circles of women and we have so much growth and we're able to have better understanding of ourselves and relationships with the men in our world. And I've just learned so much from her. And there's such a pro male energy in that and a pro female energy. And so, really decoupling that from feminism, if more and more women understand that, feminism will become quite irrelevant. More and more irrelevant. Yes, it will become more and more irrelevant. And we will finally uncouple it from the true needs that women do have in life and in society and in culture, and to be creative and to follow their passions and to be partners with men. Right. Dhickey 5959. There are videos now appearing in which women in their 20s claim to have never had a relationship at all. I suppose there are many reasons why this could be going on, but it was a shock to me. Was it possible? Then I thought back to meeting women in college classes which didn't seem to have attraction in their energy. Whatever the it factor was, many no longer seem to have it. This might explain how relationships just aren't happening as they naturally would. Any insights you have would be interesting to hear. Well, this makes me think of the work of Freya India and her work with around what's happening with women in their young 20s, the Gen Z women. And I think, yeah, feminism has done the exact opposite of what it promised to do. It has made women and young girls especially and this is not just feminism's fault, right? This is technical revolution. This is just progress for progress's sake. This is the insane amount of time young girls spend on social media. This is the fact that women are much more impressionable and agreeable and prone to groupthink than men are and boys are at that age. And so I think there's a lot of just low self-worth There's fatherlessness, right? Fatherless homes, girls growing up without a dad present, or if he was present, really not showing them their value. And so there's this lack of allure, girls being shown porn when they were 7, 8, 9 years old, really not understanding the chemical language of beauty, really not having elder women mentors that they could look to and see as captivating and inspiring, illuminating for them and making them feel like, oh wow, my beauty is something that I is within me and I can cultivate that. And hypersexuality just cheapens it. And just really the disconnection between boys and girls in general, or the blurring of the lines of their differences, right? I had someone that was telling me that she lets her teenager have boy-girl sleepovers because it's no big deal. I think that's insane. I think it's outrageous. I personally think even co-ed gyms are a little insane. It's insane. I was at the gym yesterday and this girl sat right in front of me and was stretching and she was wearing the smallest shorts I've ever seen in my life. And I was so distracted. And I'm a woman. I'm a straight woman. And so I can't imagine what was going on, but I think boys are so desensitized. And so because of that too, girls really rely on, attention from boys. And I think when they're not getting that nowadays because they're so desensitized and everything's online. So yeah, the allure is missing. The allure is not there. And so there's no space for relationships to form. And there's so many layers of factors there. The attraction is no longer in their energy. And that word that I like to use is allure, right? Because allure comes from the Old English allurin, I think French, Latin origins of this word, where it's to be drawn towards, but not just to be drawn towards, to take action because you're drawn towards something, right? It's like the epic starting of a war, right? Because you want, like for Helen of Troy, right? And so I know some of that stuff is lore and fantasy, but it's still the idea of the hero taking action because of the attraction and the allure that is coming from a woman that he wants to pursue. And so a lot of that is gone because of a lot of these factors. So that's that. TSIN 002. As a woman, can you sense with your female instinct and intuition a man has gone through his process of zone of genius? Love it. Thank you for referencing my video. Uh, I can, yes. I believe that it really comes down to the self mastery, right? A man really getting lit up by something that he has mastered or he is well on his way to mastering. And it's something that is just innate, right? It has nothing to do with physical attractiveness. It's all about this peace that exudes with him and from him and the presence that he has, right? He's no longer trying to prove himself. He's no longer trying to get validation. He's no longer trying to get attention. He's no longer trying to gauge what other people are thinking about him. He's really just sitting back in his self-mastery of what it is that is his gift, something that he's really passionate about and energized about, but something that he understands is his innate gift. And he's pursuing that. And it's a very peaceful feeling. And that's something that really, like a magnet I was talking about with the question before on dating, like it it really draws women to him. It really draws women to him. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing. And when men don't have this, another key that I've noticed, there is a almost like a line or a board or a separation between his mind and his heart, right? It's almost like his body and his head are different. So as a woman, when I connect with a man and I'm in conversation with a man, I can notice that. I notice what's if it's all logos or if there's any eros at all. And when it's all logic and it's all just here's what I know, here's what I want to tell you, it's very clear that he hasn't gone through understanding his pain and some of the things that are blocking him from having that mind heart connection, mind body connection. Once he's gone through this process, that connection becomes stronger. And as a woman, I can feel his presence. I can experience him bigger and, taking up space and breathing deeply and really just sure of his place in the world. And it's a really beautiful thing. It's very inspiring. That kind of man also is really wonderful at giving a woman his undivided attention and his presence. And for me, like I think a lot, I've talked about this in other episodes, for women, that's like, it's like what a lure does for a man. Like it's like a muse, what a muse does for a creator. It's almost like what a man's presence does for a woman. It's like, oh my God, he makes me feel like I don't have to worry. I'm not overwhelmed. I feel like I can just be here and he's the container and I'm just in his container and I feel so safe in that. And it's just such a delicious thing. And it's something most women that I know crave deeply. So that's the answer to that one. All right. Tim G. Bennett, probably a bit outside of your scope. How to feel enough for a relationship. This is a very big one. This is a very big one. And, you know, this is what I do with my clients. This is what we focus on. And just to be real, like I know Chris Williamson has the phrase in his Modern Wisdom podcast and just in his like vernacular, the idea of the insecure overachiever. And man, do I relate to that. Do I resonate with that? I spent so much of my life just really like the with the internal belief system of like I'm not good enough for that. I can't do that. I what if it doesn't work? What if they don't like me? All of that. And it's just so important to really fall in love with that part of us because that part of us is just the inner child that didn't get what they needed, the inner child that didn't have the love from dad or from mom, or rather, they had it, they just didn't experience it in the way that they understood it. So they filled in the blanks. And that's what we do. That's what Gestalt therapy really is. It's when the idea of Gestalt, which is where you fill in the missing blanks when it's not clear. And so, what do children do when they're 3, 4, 5, and things are not clear? Or mom is always gone, or dad's always yelling. Well, they fill in the blanks of I'm not getting the attention, so that must mean that I'm terrible. That must mean that I'm not worthy. And so, it's this incredibly beautiful opportunity to go on the journey of healing that. That's it. That's the journey. And once we get there and once we come out on the other side of it and we realize, okay, yeah, maybe that part of me will always be there, but man, what did I learn about myself? Did I become super resourceful? Did I become super thoughtful and empathetic towards others and all these really gorgeous qualities that come through as an over as a what's the phrase? An insecure overachiever, right? You become someone that wants to do good. You really care. And you start to realize, yeah, that's enough. And then you continue to heal the other stuff and you start to realize you are worthy, you matter, you have something to offer that is really beautiful. And anything that makes you feel less than is not worthy of staying in your life. And so just really going on that journey of healing is the answer to that one. And understanding that core relationship between with you and those core primary caregivers and understanding what that relationship was like. What was the energetic exchange there? Was it, I'm not enough, I can't trust, I can't, what is that? And whatever that is the thing that you're looking at the world through. That's the lens you're looking at the world through, right? I know a lot of people where it's, I don't trust anyone. I know a lot of people where it's, I'm not good enough. And so the I'm not good enough is so common and it's just so deep. And, it what a lot of I'm not good enough folks do is they shame that. They're like, oh, I shouldn't feel that. I should, I should this, I should that. That's bad. That's wrong. And they like make it worse. There's double shame in that. And really what that inner child is just looking for is, hey, it's okay even to not feel good enough. And that's where we start. That's the beginning of the journey towards I'm good as I am. I love who I am and makes me happy to be who I am. So that's that. Devin Stafford 9932. How important do you think it is for a woman or a man to have same-sex friends? I'm a 24-year-old woman, recently got into a relationship relationship is very fulfilling, but I don't have a single female friend, and it definitely feels like I have a giant friend-sized void to fill, and that something important is missing in my life. Thank you. Devin, I want to just say, girl, yes, same-sex friends are everything. I think they're extremely important. And I think a lot of the conversation around vulnerability is wrapped up in this, right? I did an episode on this recently. Men shouldn't be vulnerable, men should be vulnerable, the back and forth, right? The future is relational, and it's about relationship, and it's important for all of us as humans to know how to relate to one another. And I think one of the key foundational reasons why we're having such a hard time with this conversation is that both men and women do not have enough of a strong network and collective and small inner circle of same-sex friends, right? So, the conversation around men, just be vulnerable. It's coming from a place usually where this man doesn't really have a lot of a lifeline outside of his female relationship, the woman that is in his life. And so the conversation is like, well, yeah, you have to be vulnerable with her. That's how you relate. That's the only way. And there's a real misunderstanding there because had he had his male friend, the elder, the mentor, the group of guys that are solid and that are trustworthy, there's so much vulnerability that happens there. That's where the practice happens. And then he can be vulnerable with his partner in a way where it's sharing and connecting and letting her into his world, but it's not this frantic, like, I don't know what to do, you need to help me, which as humans, it's not even about gender. We shouldn't be relying on one person to do everything for us. We just shouldn't be. It's about tribe. It's about the collective. It's about the community. And in the same way that male elders are so key for men, female elders are so key for women. That's where we learn everything. I was just talking about I'm going to Australia to spend a week with 10 incredible women, like wrapped up in all of the deliciousness of female sensuality and female expression. And what does female power actually look like? What does that even mean? What is female expression? What does it look like to partner with men? And let's talk about that as women. Having close female friend is so, so, so key because you just can't put everything on your partner, especially if he's a strong, ambitious, hardworking man that, is busy and has a lot going on in his life. Like you cannot put everything that you need on him, right? I'll never be the type of person to say like, oh, your friends are just as important as your life partner. No, as your husband, as your wife, as your spouse. Uh, I'm trying not to use the word partner anymore. It's so easy to use that because of just the culture. Someone gave me some great feedback around, let's say the right words. And it's not as important as your spouse. No, but it is important to have. It's definitely important to have. And I would really recommend, Devin, that you even, no matter like depending on where the area that you are, look online. Just see women, what they're up to, what they're doing. Facebook groups, meet up in person, go to community event, uh, take a dance class, meet the women in there, and then do a girls' day with them, separate from the men in the class. So, yeah, I think it's super important. It's so enriching. Female friendships are so, so enriching. And we do something very different than what men do with us and for us. And we do something very different than what men do with each other and for them. We have a different essence. And it's so beautiful. It's just so, so beautiful. And I really wish that for you. So go forth and find some female friends. For authenticity, what strengths and weaknesses slash trends have you seen in male female clients? What trends have you seen in the dating relationship arena and what changes appear to be growing? How do you define emotional security and have men missed hit the mark? What are some differences between US culture and those from Eastern cultures in terms of dating and relationships? Okay, maybe I'll work backwards. That's a lot of questions. I think I'm going to take one of those and then maybe table the others for another Q&A. Let's see. Let's see how far I get. Eastern versus Western culture. I mean, yeah, I think that in Eastern cultures in general, there's a bigger affinity for gender roles and the value of them and the necessity of them. And it makes me think of the Nordic paradox, right? The more egalitarian we get, the more we want to fill very specific gender roles because they're actually quite innate to us when it comes to our purposes as men and women. Now, this has nothing to do with what we do and our financial contributions, right? Because that's so specific to the system that we live in. That's so specific to our nation. That's so specific to the modern era, tech, all of that. Like I always say, men and women have been working together since the beginning of time, right? It's never been women just sitting around, ever, ever, ever. And yeah, I think there's, people are getting married a lot earlier. I know that I just spent some time in Azerbaijan last year, is where I was born, my hometown, Baku. And there was just a very clear, you weren't supposed to hug people of the opposite sex. There was a very clear desire for marriage early on. I think that there's less man hating. I think there's more respect towards men. I actually had a friend send me, uh, I love that my friends do this because they know I'm interested in all this stuff. But he sent me a text exchange that he had with a woman he met in the Philippines, and there was a real like irreverent kind of just respect. The way that she was texting was so respectful, so ladylike, and just, thank you for what you did for me yesterday. That was incredible. And just, yeah, just really like being appreciative of men in general. And I thought that was really nice. I think that's something that is important. And we've lost it. We've lost it here in the U.S. And in the West in general. Even in Spain, I'd argue I spent like 4 months living in Spain a couple of years ago in Madrid, and gosh, the feminist machismo battle was out of control. There was way more insane hostility between the sexes in the workplace. Which was weird. But in the bars and in the nightlife and in the evenings, you really it was a lot more of those like very clear gender dynamics, right? Those clear gender roles. So that's interesting. What trends have you seen in the dating relationship arena? I mean, there's much more of a focus on the trad stuff, and then you're seeing like some of the woo-woo polyamory stuff. I know there was a conversation about Aubrey Marcus and his uh, dabbling in polyamory and pretending like it's, the most spiritual and holy thing that he can do. I think there's just a real delusion in general in that area. I think there's a real delusion in what people really want, what they're looking for, what works, what actually works. I think in the ideology of what, like the pretty cloudy future of my dreams versus what actually works. And I think that's a real difference also between more liberal and conservative thinking. It's like the liberal thinking is very pie in the sky, and it doesn't have to back up any of its ideas, whereas the conservative thinking has to. It's like, well, that didn't work. Here's what did work. Maybe we have some trade-offs. I don't think we can have the pie in the sky. Maybe we have to make some trade-offs for this to all work. And so bringing up Mary Harrington again, this idea of like, can we get back to the pre-industrial way of thinking about things? I know that's really insane to even say in this highly tech time, and we're moving into AI and we're moving into even more of a different space. But yeah, I think how can we co-create together? How can we give each other what the other needs? Letting go of entitlement, I think, would be a and hugely beautiful thing for men and women alike. I think there's so much entitlement, and I think it hurts relationships between men and women. So yeah, with my clients, there's a lot of the I'm not enough conversation, and there's a lot of the I just don't understand women conversation. And yeah, there's a lot of mom wounds. And so just never even having had the idea that a woman could actually support you, care for you, cheer you on, root you on, help you understand that like you are good exactly as you are, and I'm going to be here cheering for you as you figure out what matters to you and where you're headed and what you want to do. It's to have that space, right? I think that's something that a lot of my clients have never experienced. And so when you not experience something, it's not a reality, right? It's not a possibility. I had a client say to me, I've never experienced a situation in which a conversation or a relationship with a woman wasn't transactional, right? And that would make sense if that's how it was with your mother, with your sister, or with, women in your family when you were young. And of course, you don't have the operating system for that. And so that's what healing's all about. The healer, the coach helps you program a new operating system such that you can become a magnet for new experiences that you previously would not be a magnet for. And that's why, in my opinion, like it's just the most important thing in the world. And upon beginning, you cannot understand where you'll be upon ending because it's just such a big shift in your belief system that you can't comprehend it yet. And so that's what I've seen and what's been changing over in my world, which has been really beautiful. All right, I have a couple minutes left. I wanted to finish this within like 35-ish minutes. So, okay, last question. I made it. I'm going to try to do this in 3 minutes. Question number 10, melting popsicles, 5842. What do your tattoos say? Okay, so I'll go in maybe chronological order. I have this tattoo right here that says the sweetest taboo. I got this for my birthday, like maybe 10 years ago. In my 20s, I was very like artsy creative. I went to FIT in New York City. I, studied men's fashion design. I was always into arts and all of that. And I have probably been one of the biggest Sade fans of all time. I am the biggest Sade fan of all time. I will put a stake in the ground. Someone else can fight me for the title because I have loved her, and it's a really meaningful thing for me because I've had a really beautiful healing with my own dad, and we're in such a great place now. And one of the most beautiful memories of my life was when I was a little girl, and he bought me the best, greatest of Sade VHS videotape of all her videos, and so I would play that almost every day when I was little. And I just think she's the most healing, irreverent, songstress, soulful angel, goddess, woman ever. And if you listen to some of her lyrics closely, she's talking about the pain of men and she's talking about supporting and healing. That is that one song, Feel No Pain. It's a really beautiful song about men and the men in her world and just how much they need her help. And it's beautiful. And I just love her. This one is something I did when I was spending a month in Colombia. I went to a world salsa competition like right before COVID, and I was in Medellin. I spent 2 weeks there. Then I was in Bogota, and I got this really beautiful. I wanted to essentially get like a watch that is really symbolic for me in that as a insecure overachiever, recovering, right? This idea of like pressure, I need to be amazing, I need to do everything for everyone at the right time, and it all has to be perfect, and I can't get rejected. This kind of reminds me that, you know what, my time, it's my time. And then the last one I'll say here is Gari. So this is a another lyric from one of my favorite Russian rappers, Jah Khalib. There's a song when he was having a daughter, and he created a song called Gari Gari, which also reflects back to an old Russian poem from the 1800s. And there's a lot of like meaning in it around my dad and me, and basically it's a reminder. In Russian, we don't say shine bright for stars. Like we say that they like burn. So the word for a star shining is kind of like a burn. And so Gari really means, like shine bright. Don't forget your magic and your glow and your allure, and like just do you, be you. And it's a beautiful reminder from kind of like the masculine to do that. And it's like my some safety and protection in like that container. So I think that's a beautiful place to end. I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. And until the next one. Hello, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm so happy to be here bringing my wisdom, my truths, all the research I do into pop culture and evolutionary psych and beyond to bring men and women the information that we all need to know to find that ultimate harmony with each other. This is the mission. This is why I'm here. This is what I believe in. So if you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things. Either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.